Okay, welcome to week 12. Tonight's verse is Romans chapter 11, verses 33 through 36. Oh, the depths of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. Michael, would you pray for us? Michael Mickens.
Yes, thank you, David. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this week 12, continuing in these conversations, ethnic conciliation. So continue us to grow us, give us wisdom, conform us to the image of your Son, and challenge each one of us to be the light and salt you've called us to be. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Cheryl.
Okay, question number 1 tonight. Should and how can Christians speak up and speak out to show solidarity with people of other ethnicities, specifically Asian and Latino descent, to stand against prejudice or racism directed at them by leaders? And specifically, like in the political realm, that we've heard a lot of that lately, just, comments about Asian and Latino people in general. So how can Christians speak up and speak out to show solidarity? And I'll just start at the top. So Kawana.
All right, so my comment to that is just to acknowledge that these are racist statements that we have been hearing. Just call it just what it is. That is a racist statement. I don't care if it's Kung Flu or all Mexicans are murderers and rapists. Recently, a mayor in Virginia has gotten into some hot water, as they like to say, because he goes, oh, well, now the Democratic presidential nominee has picked Aunt Jemima for his running mate. I mean, really? Let's just call it exactly what it is. They're not just racist. I mean, those are very hurtful comments for people of color to hear. I would definitely ask these people, especially if you have a relationship with someone that does this, just ask them, please don't make these comments. My actual statement is, please don't repeat ignorance. Once again, everyone that you're discussing, everyone that you're name calling, they are image bearers of Christ. So once again, please, if we're all one race, let's move toward that. Let's start acting that way, and let's not bring out derogatory terms. Speak up and acknowledge, regardless of who says it.
That's good, Kawana. Shayla, welcome back. And what do you say to this?
Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Just kind of piggybacking off of what Kawana said, really one of the main points that I think of is having relationship with someone, because it can get so easy to try to correct people, even Christians, where you think that you should be able to do that because we're all of one faith. But even doing that, like, it's really important to recognize these things in people that we have relationships with. And I think it can be very easy as well to get so comfortable with the people we have relationships with that it's scary to want to say things that are contrary to maybe what they believe, and then it makes the relationship tense. But if we keep allowing these things to go on, then we're really just perpetuating the issue, because ultimately it's not going to be fixed on a macro level, it's going to be fixed on a micro level. And so having relationships with people and knowing that you can speak to them and hopefully they'll hear you will make the difference. And then it'll kind of have like maybe a ripple effect, and maybe they'll start telling other people, well, I used to think this way, but now I don't, and hopefully it will impact that way.
That's really good. Tim, what do you say to this one?
It's really hard to add any more to it. I think that the young ladies have really hit the point on there. Words have power. I mean, this world was created by words. And so if we are Imago Dei, we need to be careful about the words that we use against one another. Be uplifting, do not tear down, build up. I feel that if we build up one another up, how much more can we accomplish as we try to tear one another down?
Good. Do I have anybody else who wants to address that particular item before we move to the second one? Because I think that's going to take us just a minute. Anybody else? Okay, so let's start with this, and we'll start with Michael on this one. Okay, should we be using the term casteism instead of racism? Michael Mickens.
Casteism instead of racism. So yeah, I've just done a little bit of research on it, not a lot, but checking on what Isabel Wilkerson has wrote on this. She just recently came out with a book. Listened to a little message on it, little podcast. But possibly, I think the answer to that question for me right now is possibly. And we all know there's a lot of pushback on the word racism for a variety of reasons. And I mean, and we're just truthful about it. We know biologically there's only one race. So even in using the word from that perspective, it's not correct, right? And we know that we've grown that much. We understand that much. So casteism may be the better all-inclusive term, being better than the term racism for those reasons I just mentioned. And it makes more of a observation than an accusation. And that may make it helpful in these ethnic conciliation conversations that we're having, that it's an observation instead of an accusation at a person and looking at society.
Okay, will you explain it just a little bit more for people who haven't read? Is it Isabel Wilkerson? Will you explain it just a little bit more?
Well, she wrote a book before that, and I can't think of the name of it at that. And even in that book, she didn't term it racism. And she went to India. She studied various cultures. She spoke with people in times past, and just looking at the structures. And for the reasons I already mentioned, biological reasons, and you see these structures in place that and we can probably best see it in India, as you used that example. It's just certain levels in society that you're born and you're not going to go to certain places. You're not going to be able to achieve certain heights. And so you even look back with the history with people of color, Black people specifically. So that's true. You're born at a certain time. Okay, your ceiling has been defined for you. This is about only how far you're going to be able to go, no matter who you are, what you can do. It's not based on that. You're born into a system that's already going to say, this is as far as you can go. This is going to be as much as you can achieve. Not based on anything about you, but that the system is in place that you're already born into.
Wow. Caitlin, do you have anything you want to add to this about casteism rather than racism?
So when I looked up the definition for casteism, it is adherence to the caste system, which doesn't actually help me define the word. So I can't say too much about it. I will say that Ross and I watched Indian Matchmaker. Did anyone watch that on Netflix? By the way, just okay. I see you. And it was very interesting because the matchmaker, she would always make note of whether or not the women or the men were fair. And to be fair was to be desirable. And anything below that is not. So a quick kind of Google search, I saw an image here about the caste system in India, and I realized that we're not talking about India specifically, but it's big there. And it goes from I think it's pronounced Brahmin. How would you pronounce that? Mm-hmm. So that's the top. And then, but the bottom, y'all, is called untouchables. That's the name of the bottom. And that's the street sweepers and the latrine cleaners. And to Michael's point about what you were born into is you can't change that. No matter how much skin lightening cream I tried to put on myself, which I've never done, but no matter how much I would try to do, I'm still in this class, right? And then what was the thing you said before I unmuted?
I think I don't know that I would have made a decision yet. I think kind of like Michael, like possibly. I think the difficulty is that in America, we believe that everyone has opportunity and anyone can make it rich and be successful. That's the American dream. And so I think it's really hard for people to see that there are very distinct classes and possibly castes in America. We think, especially people at the top think, well, everyone could get where I did. And people who are in that middle class, low middle class level think, well, I'm not at the bottom, I'm almost at the, everyone thinks that everything's attainable, even if it isn't really. So it may be appropriate, but it may be hard to get people on board just because we like to not see ourselves like that. It's the same thing with using the word racism. No one wants to see themselves as being racist, so that's the wrong word. But just an observation.
That's really good. That's a good observation. That's very helpful. Lauren, what say thee, wordsmith?
I actually don't have words this time around. I actually don't really have anything else to add. It was just kind of an interesting concept mostly to read up on. And I haven't really I'm still processing, should it be casteism? Should it be racism? There's some things I can see there. It's just like, okay, that makes sense. And there's others that, don't really apply. I don't think really applies, but I really don't really have anything else to add.
Okay. This next one, I'm going to just reword just a little bit. But I sent a podcast, and one of the defenses they gave was relational proximity justification, which is I can't be a racist because Keziah is my best friend and she's Black, so I can't be a racist. And I also have a Black child, so I can't be racist. And I checked out at the grocery store and the cashier was Black and she liked me, so I cannot be racist. So that's what it means. Okay, so how have you personally seen the relational proximity justification used, especially in discussing racism? You particularly, how have you seen, especially I would say white people, use this relational proximity justification, and how can we kind of combat that? Lauren, I'm going to come to you because I feel like you can speak to this.
Surprisingly, I have not experienced this in real life, like in a face-to-face conversation with tangible human beings. I have seen it all over the place online. So I don't know if that if that will serve as an example, if we're looking for, interactions, like interaction in that way. But online, it's just basically like what you were saying, Cheryl. It's, I can't be racist because I have insert Black friend, coworker, child, that sort of thing. One example I saw that counteracts that point, that doesn't pertain to racism, was had to mostly do with like gender. And it was just like, well, some men are still misogynist and they have wives and daughters and sisters. So it's really just, we're looking at this as a sin issue is what it is. And since racism is a sin issue, then it doesn't matter who we're close to, like we're still affected by this sin. I can have, relatives who try to be honest and I could still lie. So it doesn't matter who the person next to us is and how they're related to us. If racism is a sin issue, we're still affected by it. We're still kind of raised in a culture that perpetuates it. So like I said, I haven't had an actual example, never has a friend said that to me or anybody I've talked to said that to me, but I see it a lot online.
Good. Caitlin, what would you say?
I actually had a situation maybe a month or so ago when there was the shooting at our local mall, and a little Black boy was killed. And a woman that I used to work with put on Facebook, a white woman, she had put on Facebook the kind of posing the question of how can, I'm trying to think how I want to word this. She was basically saying, how can we as Black people not be like up in arms about this? And do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was a while ago, and she got a ton of comments. So I'm really trying to remember what she said, but she was just like, you know, I really want to advocate for you, but when this stuff happened, I don't know how I'm supposed to, you know, I see Kawana's face, so she kind of sees where I'm going with this. But I had commented on it because, you know, it was foolish. I mean, it was just simply foolish. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because she has a biracial child, not Black, maybe Hispanic, and then she had gone to maybe a predominantly Black high school. So she also made the comment to some of her friends, like, you guys know I'm not racist. Like, I went to this school, and then like that was like a month ago. So like I said, there were a lot of comments. People kind of spoke their mind to her. She still had a hard time. After a while, she understood it, but just with the question that she posed, she had a hard time separating the two. And then when she was kind of called out for it, it was, well, I can't be this because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing a lot of. I can't be because, so Michael, what do you say to that?
I mean, I probably wouldn't add too much that's, you know, already been said. I guess one classic example that I think about, and me and my sister, we just talk about it from time to time. It just stands out too, and it's basically what it's saying. But, you know, George Wallace, former governor of Alabama, he's at the end of his life. And I guess, you know, try to justify that, you know, I wasn't racist and all this. He was like, yeah, see that guy, that Black guy right there? Yeah, he's been all around the world with me. He's traveled all around the world with me. And so that's using that. And then, okay, well, what about all that other stuff that happened but that guy traveled, you know? So once again, it's that cognitive dissonance. It's like, okay, what is it? Do you understand? So that's something that we talk about from time to time. That's that example of that. And I don't know why we talk about it, but that always comes to our mind when thinking about situations like that George Wallace statement.
Kiwana, you want to add to this?
I'll just say something I think that was echoed maybe a couple of weeks back, but, you know, we just test yourself. You know, we're always looking, we always need to examine our motives, everyone, you know. So why did I feel the need to say that I have a Black cousin, sister-in-law, best friend, went to that high school, you know, things of that nature? Because there's something in us that needs to prove something. So why do you feel the need to prove that? You know, I've had former coworkers working in a rural environment that, you know, they treat me fine, but, you know, when it comes to some of the students, you know, and then I have to go and advocate for that student. And that's just another whole story altogether, because as a person of color, yes, I'm going to understand that Black student. The white teacher will not understand as well. So, I mean, just once again, why? So examine your motives. You know, we all need to always check our prejudices.
So Kiwana, going off of that, why do you feel like you're treated differently than the student would be treated in that particular situation?
Well, in that situation, it would be more like, and I have to catch myself because my husband know I will go into do voices. I will say that it was like, oh, you're, as a teacher, so I'm more being treated as a professional, and I always had to be on my professional game. I could not go in slacking in a rural environment when there was only, at the most we ever had, like 6 Black teachers, 2 of them being males, and then after that, now there are 0 Black teachers at this particular school. And yes, there will be Black students. But once again, so I had to step up my professional game. I had to talk the talk better than they did. Remember, I had to do all my fancy code switching. And so therefore they saw me as, oh, wow, she's really smart. She knows her stuff. So therefore I was treated more as a professional and not the student, because, well, the students come from that environment and so forth. And well, you're where you are now, not knowing anything about me. No one ever asked me what my background was or what my environment was. So no one ever knew anything about me. But they're just like, oh, well, we know where the kids come from, especially if there was a transfer student involved, someone that came more from the city and wasn't like raised out there where they were. So that's a lot of those kids, they didn't end up staying long.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, Kiwana, based on that. So would those teachers say that you were their friend? And would you say that you were their friend?
Oh, of course I was their friend. That's what they say.
What would you say?
No. No. And I'm going to say no, because we were work friends. Our relationship started at 7:45 when we clocked in. It ended at 3:15 when that bell dismissed us. We didn't get together. We didn't hang out at anybody's house. I did have a few good conversations with a couple, and that was based upon us being Christians and us, trying to just grow in the word. So, I could have a word of encouragement and so forth. So, that was cool. But once again, so if you're not having any interaction with me, we're work friends, then that's where that relationship stops. So I'm your friend at work, and I'm also your colleague.
Okay, Shayla, what do you say to this? Have you seen anybody use the relational proximity justification? And how can we combat that?
Yeah, I think that definitely ditto to everything that everyone else has said. And I was actually going to go to the point of kind of where Kiwana was going. I guess we're just pinging off of each other today, but there's social currency. It exists for a lot of different reasons in a lot of different ways in a lot of different subcultures, but there is social currency. And so with that being said, when you have your proximal Black friend, for the people who are saying, I have a Black friend or a Black family member, it's fine. That's social currency. That's saying, well, I'm going to use this person as my safety blanket, if you will, to make myself seem a different way. And then also what Kiwana was saying, like, oh, I'm treating you differently because you are this. That's social currency. That's, oh, you're one of the good ones. And so therefore, I'm going to treat you differently because you're a good version of this group that I think is bad. And so you're an exception to the rule. Well, that's not okay. And it's definitely not godly to exclude anyone, because James 2, just go and read it, there are no favorites, okay? And so people will try to justify, hey, I have these people in my life, but you don't really have them, because if people really truly knew the struggle of some lives, and I think that even collectively Black people have become very closed off to where we don't even want to share our full struggle because people won't understand, to the point that it's like, you're not ever going to know me, so it's going to be hard for you to understand when I come out and say I'm grieving the death of this person who was killed unjustly, because you don't understand where I'm coming from. And I think that's a lot of what Kiwana was saying, but that's a lot of where I see you guys like all reacting. But yeah, it's just, there's social currency, and I think it's very prevalent in the majority culture. That's how I'm going to say that. The majority culture of where what you can do for me is good. If you can't do anything for me, it's bad. And so, yeah, my Black friend is good for me because it makes me look like not a racist, even though I say things behind closed doors that are definitely racist.
I also want to add to that, Shayla, because that's a very good point. Snaps all around. The social currency part even goes beyond, denying racism or prejudice. It adds to your cool factor. Some people use it as I have a Black person in my life, therefore I am privy to Black spaces and Black culture, without doing the work to really, like Shayla was saying, getting to know people, getting to actually truly know folks. And as far as the Black spaces thing, not everything's for everybody. So, Black spaces aren't open to everybody. So, but people will use that like social currency of like, I have a friend from this group, therefore I feel like I have the right to them and their spaces and their culture.
Okay, wow. I haven't heard it put that way. That's incredible. Thank you, Shayla and Lauren. Tim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that about relational proximity?
Not really. I know that Lauren had put in the chat about token, being the token, and then I've heard that actually used in our church in reference to me and Michael. So that was kind of hurtful. It threw me back, and I wanted to say something. And even to this day, it still throws me back. When I read this, it's like, well, yeah, you're the token Black person of the church, or, well, Michael, Michael's not the only token Black person of the church. I'm going, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond. So I didn't respond, and I have yet to respond. Of course, this was pre-COVID, of course. But, and just that, well, you're not like the other ones, well, yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm just like any other Black person that has walked this earth, that is walking this earth, or that will walk this earth. I mean, I'm just like them. So I don't like to be lumped in that category. Well, you're not like them. It's a balance of it's a justification. And I don't know, that was a hard one to really process and to really think about. Because, I was thinking through it, and then when Lauren put that token, it really is like, whoa, it opened my eyes, and it reminded me of that comment. So how do we combat that? I personally should have said something at the time. I did not. Do I feel comfortable saying something now? To be honest, no. I don't think it's going to make a difference. But some things you kind of just let go. You kind of just let it go off your back and smile and walk on. And that's what I did. Maybe that wasn't the right thing to do, but I did that.
I'm so sorry that was said to you. That was uncalled for. Okay, to the other people who are on the panel or other people who are on this call, I'm going to ask you the same question, because somebody even asked in the chat, is this something that white people are seeing more of, in that we hear people using this relational proximity justification? I have a Black friend, or I have a Black coworker, or I have a Black child, or I have somebody in my family who's Black. Do we hear this more? And how do we combat this with people that are our friends who would say, well, I'm not racist because, or I don't have a racist bone in my body, you can ask so-and-so. Have we heard this, and how do we combat it? Anybody? I'm gonna sit back so I can see. Okay, Noelle.
Okay, there we go. So I actually had like all of the little sayings that you just said, Cheryl, said to me last week by a dear friend of mine who I've known for years and years. And it was funny because as I sat there and thought like, okay, how am I going to respond? Because I need to sit and think on it for a minute. I found myself just trying to muster all of the, maybe this wasn't right, this is me, all of the grace and compassion that I could, and coming with my experience of realizing ways that I have done this, not overtly or like cognitive, or is that the word, cognitively? Yeah, like not intentionally, but just realizing like, oh no, there's things in my heart, like if we're all affected by sin, which we are, every single thought process we have is affected by sin in one way or another. So let me get curious about myself. And so I found that that was the way that I was able to kind of like say, you know what, like, I love you. These are some things that I've seen. And I actually pointed her to the videos because I was like, it's been really eye-opening and all these things, but it was, yeah, like every single one of those lines was said. And so it's interesting to be like, oh, that's the wording. That's exactly what that is. But yeah, you just rung a bell and I was like, ooh, let me answer this one.
Okay, anybody else heard this or seen this? I'm sitting back so I can see everybody at once. Natasha?
I heard it quite a bit actually from my family, which is quite interesting. And my sister, whom I kind of take with a grain of salt almost everything she says, just because that's her personality. When everything just started recently, you know, she posted out how she dated a Black guy in high school and then why she wasn't racist. And then she proceeded to tell me about how she took the brunt of it while my brother was doing the same thing and all this kind of stuff. And I don't see, when I've been accused of something that I didn't do, I don't have any reason to try to defend myself because I know it's not true, no matter how much I'm accused of it. So I feel like when people say I'm not racist because of, I feel like they're just trying to justify it to themselves. Because if you have to say that, then that means that there's probably something in you that you don't realize or that you're denying. And that's been the case from every white family member and friend that I've seen. Because who are you trying to prove it to? Because surely you don't have anything to prove to me. If so, why? So that's kind of my thought on it.
That's a good point. I mean, there are times, I know when our boys were going to give a quote to somebody for a job they did, I felt like I had to say to her, just so you know, I had one of these boys is Latino and one of them's Black before they showed up at her door. Because I didn't want her to think when they showed up to her door that they were supposed to be there and not in the wrong place. And I felt like I had to say that for their safety. And then I think, why do I have to say that? And sometimes, even in conversation, I can see where it feels like some people, including myself, sometimes would say, like, I feel like I have to say, and these two children are from Uganda, so that when, like, I'm in somebody's presence or they don't know us otherwise, that I'm really doing it for the sake of my children so that they won't be treated differently when we come somewhere or something. I'm trying to prepare them so that they will not treat my children differently when they get there. But I think Michael and Kiwana and David and I were all in a conversation recently where we heard I dated a Black person. I have Black friends. I have Black people that have hired me. And that was the defense. And I think it goes back to who said that about being a misogynist. Who said, I can't remember who just said that.
Lauren.
Was that Lauren? Of course it was. Lauren, who said that. I mean, you can be a misogynist and still be married and have a mom, obviously, and have daughters and have women in your life and still be a misogynist. Has anybody else heard this defense? And how do we combat this as believers? Madison, I know because you're in college, you hear this all the time.
I would say that I hear this like a lot, but I think I heard it more in high school than I heard it now. I also hear it a lot with our family, but I do remember a very specific time in high school that I heard it. We were like all eating lunch together, and somebody was talking about like their ancestry or whatever, and how their ancestor was like a slave owner and how they were really proud of it. But they were like, but I'm not a racist because I have black friends. And I remember in that moment, I was like, much less eloquently, I bet, because not a very eloquent person, but saying that the likelihood is that all of us in that room are racist or have at some point in our life done something that was racist. And even, I mean, I am someone that I was the only person really in that room that had any kind of racial proximity, but I can recognize that I have most likely made mistakes in my life that were based on prejudice. And so I shouldn't have to defend myself and say I'm not racist, because in all vulnerability, I most likely have made things that were prejudice-based decisions, and I have done things that were wrong, and I am working to become a better person. But if I feel the need to defend myself, that's because I want to stay the way that I am and not grow as a person. And I think that it's important to realize if you're being called out as a racist, you're trying to stay the way that you have always been and to not change. And whoever was saying it earlier about how like it's also a personal thing, so it doesn't matter who's around you. I mean, people commit crimes all the time that they don't commit to their family members, but they commit to other people. Like serial killers might not kill their whole family, but they kill other people, you know, just because. So I think that's one of the things to just keep in mind, that if you really weren't a racist, you wouldn't necessarily feel the need to defend yourself so much. And if you really felt like you were willing to grow and change, then you would be willing to accept the criticism and develop as a person.
That's my daughter. Mom. Okay. David, did you want to say something to this?
I'll just give this example. If I went about tomorrow and somebody was talking about COVID and I called it the Kung flu, and they said, hey, that's racist, that dialogue. And my response is, no, it can't be racist. I'm part of an ethnic conciliation group on Tuesday night, right? I'm trying to launch a defense versus saying, I want them to understand me versus seeking to understand how something I've done doesn't measure up to the gospel. So Cheryl uses that phrase with me on many different levels, often seeking to be understood versus seeking to understand. And that's one of the problems we get into when we're trying to be defensive is we don't want to recognize, hey, this is sin in my life, or this doesn't line up with the gospel, versus just pivoting and go, you're right, that's sin. I need to dig more into that to find out why that's an issue. So that's all.
I mean, you can't possibly be a racist if you eat at a Chinese restaurant. I mean, that's kind of a fact, apparently. Okay, Kinsley, I see that you've raised your hand, apparently, and I didn't see you out of the corner of my old eyes. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, one, I think white people, we hear this all the time because white people say stuff to white people that they're not going to say in front of minority people, and it's often preceded by it before you even have to confront someone. You know, I'm not racist because blah, 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 but, and then insert whatever comment. Like, I hear this all the time. But I think even two ways that I think of how we help combat it is, well, we all, so speaking for us from majority culture, we all have friends of minority culture. Many of us on this call have children of minority culture or spouses or what, you know, and we know our own hearts. We know how sin affects our own hearts. I think we're a part of this group because we can be honest with ourselves about that. And we need to be willing to be open and honest and confessional regarding our sin with those we have relationship. Like, we can help model and reveal, you know, this is, I'm with you, but this is in me. And then the other thing I think is just a different way to talk about sin, not to soften it, but we're all sinners. None of us want to be defined by our sin. So, you know, racist is both a noun and an adjective, right? You can be a racist. You can be racist. Well, I don't want to be known as a liar. I don't want to be known as dishonest, but that is true. I am a liar. I am dishonest because I do sin by lying. Like take any number of sins and we can apply that to every person on this call. Well, I don't want to be known as a racist. I don't want to be called racist, but I have a racist problem. I have a racist problem because I have a sin problem and it's present. And I think just helping, I think that can be a unique way to help people think we're not trying to define you according to the sin. That doesn't mean the sin's not present. And again, it's not trying to soften or let anyone off a hook, but you're trying to get them to a point where they can listen. And if the defenses are just immediately up, you know, you're just not going to get anywhere with people. We can't just be, well, we're trying to tell you what's real and you're just trying to deny it. We're not going to get anywhere with that. We have to try to think of how can we help bring them along.
Right, that's the ultimate goal, right, Chris? I mean, and I do think that many of us on this call who have, you know, someone in our family who's Black or whatever, we found ourselves being used as the justification. Well, I have a Black family member, or, you know, the Turners are our friends and they have a Black child, so I can't be racist. And that's not true.
I get people telling me, you can't be racist, you have a Black son. Mm-hmm. And it's afforded me many opportunities to go, oh, let me tell you how broken I am. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, it's like, yeah, anyway.
Me too. I'm with you, Chris. And I will say, and I've said it before, that I didn't see that there were any issues. I did not see the importance of racial issues until I had a Black child. And that is sad, but it is true. That's true. Okay, question number 4. How have you seen niceness used to disprove the presence of racism? And does this imply that bigotry, did Lauren just stretch before I asked this question? She's stretching for this question. Does this imply that bigotry or prejudice is rare and only applied to mean-spirited, intentional acts of discrimination? Lauren, since you've stretched first, why don't you go?
I just started a new job. I'm in front of a computer all day. My shoulders are killing me. But I also was very excited for this question. The two are unrelated. Yes. So I spend a lot of my time, especially now, online. As a person who works in the social media world, I am on social media more than I would like to be. So I have definitely seen niceness used to disprove racism. I have a couple, I was coming with the terms. I have a couple of terms, actually just one. So we call this toxic positivity, which is defined as the excessive and ineffective overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state across all situations. The process of toxic positivity results in denial, minimization, and invalidation of the authentic human emotional experience. So I have seen toxic positivity used as far as, I guess like a lesser example would be like, can we all just get along? Don't bring negativity here. I don't want the negative vibes, positive vibes only. Why do you have to be so negative? Why do you have to be so angry? If we're talking about social climbing as it relates to racism, if I can do it, if this X, Y, and Z Black person can do it, so could you. Like it's using positivity to dismiss the actual problem. And what that results in is a lot of suppression of emotions. You're not actually tapping into the situation. Also, the psychology website says that it results in isolation and other relational problems, which could exacerbate racism. I don't think this implies that bigotry and prejudice is rare and only to mean-spirited people. Because we keep going back to this because it's true, because it's a sin problem, and there are nice people who deal with sin. I brought this up a couple weeks ago, but there's a chart, and it's a little triangle, and at the top of the triangle it says overt white supremacy or overt racism, and these are the examples that we usually see as like, this is definitely racist. We're talking about hate crimes, hate groups, racist jokes, neo-Nazis, racial slurs, that sort of thing. But underneath that little tip are things that are covert that we don't really think of, or like, it's just a joke, or color blindness, or things like that. So you can be nice. As a person who's not from the South, one of the things that I've really seen or really found interesting is kind of like Southern niceties. So things like, oh, bless her heart. Some people actually mean that, like, you poor thing. But like, it's known in like Southern culture that bless your heart usually does not mean bless your heart. So if something that nice and polite and mannerisms and Southern hospitality and that sort of thing could be filled with such vitriol sometimes, then no, like, just being nice and polite does not negate the presence of racism and prejudice.
Well, and bless your heart can mean I feel sorry for you, but it can also mean you're an idiot, depending on your tone. Okay, Caitlin, what do you say about this? Have you seen niceness used to disprove the presence of racism?
I don't mean to do this every time, but I can't go after Lauren. Like, there's nothing more to be said. There's really not. I'm just going to waste people's time. I'm going to be like, I'm going to piggyback off. I echo what she said. Like, there's nothing.
Oh no, it is hard to go after her. I should just leave her for last. Okay. Michael, what do you say to this?
I think it goes back a little bit to what Chris said earlier. It's not wanting to be defined by that term, and being a stumbling block. So it goes back to I think I'm a good person. I have not committed any intentional acts of racism. We hear the term. I've heard it a lot more lately in the past couple of weeks, and that resonates with me. I've never owned slaves. And like, really? I mean, I thought you did. I mean, come on. We know you haven't owned slaves, right? But once again, using that as that, of course I haven't done anything like that, because you don't want to be defined like that, what Kinsley was talking about earlier. So that's all I would say on it at this point.
So are you saying that when someone says, I have never owned slaves, that they're suggesting that they're too nice to be a racist because they haven't owned slaves?
That, I mean, I don't know why they in game with that statement, but I've heard it a lot. Like, it's like, well, that's the only way that you can define being racist, that you've had to have owned slaves. I mean, I guess you'd have to talk with each person individually to get where they're getting at, but that's what I get from it. That, okay, well, that's the litmus test. Then, if I haven't owned slaves, therefore, I'm not a racist. Okay, so.
Okay, Kiwana, what do you say?
So when I first read this question, I actually thought about Archie Bunker, everybody's little lovable bigot, as he was nicknamed. And Lauren has already said, being the South, we have our own little way of subtleness. And, hey, I'm born and raised here in our great state. I've been in the same county all of my life. So I'm a true home girl. So with that, it's like you grow up listening to things, hearing things, to the point where, you either just get used to them and ignore them, or learn to tune them out, because we can say things so politely, and it comes off so well-meaning. Oh, your hair, it's just so puffy. I just want to touch it. You know, was that not the politest thing you've ever heard? It was a compliment, but yet it was a microaggression. So, so once again, we have these things that we've just built up here in the South. So I say yes, you can be a polite racist, you can smile and you can say bigoted things, but once again, you know, check your heart, check your motives.
That's good. That's good, Kiwana. Shayla?
All right, I'm coming in hot with some examples because I feel like just in case, I'm a connections person. So as much as I can connect to other things I've seen or done, the better I actually learn something. So here's my teacher mode for you guys. I've got 2 examples. If you don't get the first, hopefully you'll get the second. Raise your hand if you've seen The Color Purple. Okay. If you haven't, it's okay. So in The Color Purple, there is a portion, I think it's before the CD flips over for all of you who have had the original DVD. But before you have to flip the DVD over for the second side, there is a portion where Sophia, for those of you who understand, is with her children out in town, and she is the mayor's wife. Her name is Miss Millie. Miss Millie is a well-meaning woman, and she's just like talking about how her kids basically are going to work for her one day. And Sophia is not one to really just step down. So she says, excuse me, and basically like just the whole thing escalates. She ends up hitting somebody, goes to jail for a long time after she gets beat up by a bunch of people, thinking that the sheriff's going to help her. He doesn't. And so this happens. Miss Millie thought she was just being nice. Later on, part of Sophia's punishment, she gets out of jail early to drive Miss Sophia around and teach her how to drive. She goes home for Christmas. Miss Millie's like, oh, I'm so nice. I'm letting you go home for Christmas. You don't have to stay with me. I'm going to drive myself home. Well, then she can't drive the car. And she's like, all these black men are coming out here trying to attack me. They were trying to help her. She thought she was being nice. If you don't get that one, I've got another one for you. The Help. Okay, so in The Help, there is a portion of this movie that is absolutely despicable. That seems so nice. Like, we are raising money so we can put a separate bathroom in our houses for our help. Because they're not allowed to use our toilets because they're dirty animals. They think they're being nice. Aren't we so wonderful? We raise all this charity we're doing, raising this money for these extra bathrooms that we have the money to put in our houses. These extra bathrooms so that the colored people don't have to use the same bathroom as us. We are so nice. Y'all, that's not nice. That's not nice. That's all I gotta say.
Wait, Kiwana has a mic. Okay, Tim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that since Kiwana just dropped the mic?
What else am I gonna say to all of that? I mean, you know, she went to The Help. I mean, you want some pie? I was like, sorry. I didn't mean to digress. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But no, speaking to that, Kinsley, you had it right. I mean, we all are sinners. We don't want to be defined by our sins, but we all have to look in and say, if I've sinned once, I don't deserve the grace of God. So, you know, that is just, I mean, we have to look inward at ourselves to help look outward at someone else. But that niceness is, it's a hard pill to swallow. And I think I hit on that earlier whenever I was called the token. Maybe they thought they were being nice. Maybe they, you know, I don't know, but it really bothered me. But, you know, I have to look at myself and I'm like, you know, I'm just as bad as that person. I'm just as bad. I am no better than. So during this call, I think I've come to a realization that I just need to forgive and just let it go. I don't need to act upon it. I don't need to pursue it. I just need to give it to God and say, you know, through this type of medium right here, I'm able to really share this and I'm able to let it go. So this last question, I'm, you know, maybe being nice. Maybe they thought that was being nice, but it was not. It was not.
And I think as we end on this, nice, you know, Christianity and being nice are not the same thing. I mean, it's not the same thing. Or being a Southerner and being nice, not the same thing. So, David?